Hello and welcome everybody to the fourth episode of the In the Clutch podcast. I'm your host Cody Roskins. Alongside me, the always John Michael, and then a new guest we have this week, replacing Gavin, who had a prior commitment for tonight. Jon Komosa, another member of our Clutch Sports media team. Guys, how are your guys' days going? What's kind of the vibe on this Monday?
Yeah, day's going good. I mean, obviously, long weekend of football, college football Saturday. Watched some games last night. A heartbreaking loss for my beloved Bears, but getting over that. So, and then Monday Night Football tonight. So just kind of a full slate. Can't get away from the game of football.
Yeah, definitely. I spent my day building a shrine to Josh Allen. Hopes he'll deliver me to a 2-0 start in fantasy. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yeah. So aside from being a big fantasy performance from Josh Allen and Devin Singletary, it's been a pretty good day. Sitting here in the office of the Bradley Scout newspaper, just getting some work done, interviewing some new potential candidates. But overall, it's been a good day. Can't wait to talk about some football though.
Yeah, I know Joko and I, we play each other in fantasy this week, and we're having the worst fantasy performances of all time. So I've got to have somehow Jake Elliott outscore Adam Thielen by 4 points to get the win this week. But
honestly, could happen. Could happen.
Well, as we kind of get more back on topic, guys, we had a really busy Friday this last week. John and I had the game over right across the street from me at Dozer Park, where Richwoods and PND did battle in the Shamrock Classic. And then Joko, you were in Pekin for Washington Pekin. Why don't you break down that game for us? We tuned in a little bit. Looked like it was pretty close there for a while. And there's just kind of a, one team going on a run and kind of answering.
Yeah, it was one of those games, early on where Washington got a lead 7-6, and then Pekin started to run away with it a little bit. It got to the point where it was 35-7. And you're thinking, okay, the Dragons pretty much have this one wrapped up. But Washington came right back, led by Jake Stewart, quarterback over there. And he really kind of led the charge, got a couple nice touchdowns to Seth Harbaugh. They get it to within 35-21. But then from there, Pekin, as we've seen all year, they just continue to wear you down. Tanner Sprecher had 3 touchdowns. He was just a workhorse all game long. And then Kanye Tyler added a big touchdown late. And Scotty Jordan to Bo Benassi through the air was just quite the scene to watch on Friday night as they were, hooking up left and right. And eventually, Pekin wins that game 49-28. But credit to Washington. They hung with them. That's just such a tough Pekin team to stop on the ground. Their defensive line, their offensive line up front, giving their guys blocks, and then obviously just able to burn secondaries with their passing game. It's just really incredible, and I think Pekin's got a great shot to kind of run the table here.
Yeah, and John, we were just touching on it. We had the game at Richwoods in PND, but we also tuned in. From afar, it kind of looked like, like you said, Washington was kind of out of it, but all of a sudden, the Panthers kind of showed flashes of what they had a week ago with Metamore, and they're all of a sudden right back in it.
Yeah, definitely.
And go ahead, John.
Oh yeah, no. I was just gonna say that Washington's a team that you can never really count out. I know we talked with Wes Hewitt about that last week, but even when they're down 35-7, they're still gonna make a run. The Panthers are not just gonna wilt like a dead flower, I guess, so to say. So I was impressed by their effort, to come back late and everything. It's good to see the Stewart to Harbaugh connection start to work as well. But as Joko said, Pekin is such a hard team to beat because they have so many playmakers. I looked at Bo Benassi's stats. They put like a Randy Moss line, like 3 catches, 160 yards, and like a touchdown. So he didn't. I don't think it was a touchdown catch every single pass like that one infamous Randy Moss graphic. It was like 3 catches, 163 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But it was pretty close. And Tanner Sprecher definitely had one of his best games, if not the best game of the 2022 season so far.
Yeah, and we'll touch on both the Panthers and the Dragons here in just a second. But on to Richwoods PND in the 2022 rendition of the Shamrock Classic. And John Michael, give me kind of your take from it. You were on the color commentary with me. It was a really high-scoring game for about the first quarter, and then after that it kind of tapered off.
Oh, man, yeah. That first quarter was, probably the most fun I've ever had calling a broadcast, honestly. It was just touchdowns left and right. Richwoods forced an early turnover. 2 plays later, Kyzon Davis punches it in. And then, P&D comes back and scores. And then, next scoring drive, Richwoods comes down. And Greg Bernstein just, lofted that beautiful touchdown pass to Javen Moore. I wish I would have had a video of that because that was just, it was like watching poetry in motion right there. It was just an art piece right there. But, and then, obviously P&D hung with them. They, took the lead. And then And then, as we were saying going into halftime, we're like, Richwoods, they cannot fall flat going into the second half because they had held the lead at Bloomington and lost it. They had held the lead at Morton and lost it. And then, kind of the question was, can they finish him off? Can they, play a decent second half and at least even to stay in the game? And, they made a statement coming out of halftime. Obviously, it wasn't quite as much scoring as there has been, but they really, even though, P&D put over 300 yards on the ground, I think that's kind of, maybe, I mean, obviously the stats don't lie, but I think, when you're actually watching the game, I think it was like a little bit misleading. It didn't feel like P&D had 300 yards of rushing because Richwoods really did clamp down on defense, really, defended the sidelines well, and, kind of forced them between the tackles, which, P&D was still able to break off some big runs with Liam Ludolph, their fullback. He was really impressive, over 100 yards in the touchdown. Jack Hanley had a couple big runs as well, but overall, the Richwoods offense was more explosive, and their defense, you got to credit them as well, because even though they gave up 35 points, the defense has been their Achilles heel, but, they did enough, and their offense just really carried the load behind Greg Burnside and Corey Weisinger.
Yeah, I guess when I'm, looking back at that game, it was, again, a 41-point, I think it was, first quarter. And so it was really kind of like, can both teams really keep up this pace? And I think you said it during the broadcast. It was an exact 180 of what we thought we were going to see going into the game. And then all of a sudden, P&D's offense kind of stalls out. I think it was like a 13-0 Richwoods second quarter. And it was exactly like you said. P&D came out in the second half, looked like Richwoods was going to lose the lead in the second half. I think they cut it down to, just about one score, maybe 9 points. But then all of a sudden, Richwoods was just like, yeah, no, we're taking this. And they just put the pedal right back down, and Burnside, he might have been the most impressive player on the field. And I don't know if any of us really expected that going in. We knew he was a great talent, but he definitely put it on display.
Yeah, no, Burnside was a player that I've been wanting to see for a long time. I know, we broadcasted Richwoods earlier in the season. I didn't see him at all last year. I was not at that Richwoods Morton game, and I was really impressed with seeing what he could do. And even though he had a great showing through the air, he also made it happen with his legs too, which is kind of what I almost expected to see. He had a 69-yard rushing touchdown that was huge in the second half. I think that might have put them up 2 scores if memory serves me right. I could be wrong, but either way, I know that at that juncture in the game where he took off for that long TD run, it was really huge, and that's what you want out of your senior leader. I mean, Burnside, we talked to them. He's a great guy. Head coach Jim Ulrich just really loves him, praises his leadership abilities, and he just really put it on display in that game. They didn't peak too early is what I was trying to say. Even though they had 21 in the first quarter, and it slowed down a little bit after that. But that, like you said, just pedaled to the metal, didn't stop, and it was enough to get them through for a dub.
Yeah, and Joko, we had Richwoods earlier in the year when we were down in Morton, and this team looked like a completely different unit. I mean, obviously you were at a different game, but what have you kind of seen change from Richwoods to this point?
Yeah, like you said, that game we're at Morton, I saw some good things from Richwoods early, and then the wheels started to come off a little bit where Morton just really took advantage as they've shown this year. If you can't stop Morton's running game, you're in for a long game, and that's kind of eventually what happened to Richwoods. But, I've seen the highlights from the Notre Dame game that you guys were at, and just a completely different looking Richwoods team. Just a lot of speed on the ground. Greg Burnside looked composed. He had some really nice passes. That's a huge statement win, especially over your rival, and then getting that first win at Dozer Park, I think it adds a lot of confidence. And they're kind of getting into the bulk of their schedule in the Big 12. Richwoods could make some noise here. It's just that one big win you get out of the way to get that confidence back, and I think they can ride that momentum, especially going into Friday night's game, a big game against Normal West. So, look for the Knights to obviously kind of bounce back and try to get the winning back on track here.
Yeah, it's kind of like that East Peoria effect we saw earlier in the year, right? We saw EP run off one win, then they got 2 wins, played another, it's kind of like that, just building skills mindset. But we'll touch on all those teams here in just a second. But guys, it's time to move into our 3 words or less. It'll be myself and Jonathan taking cracks at this one. John, what have you got for your 3 words or less segment this week?
Yeah, so for my 3 words, Cody, I know we kind of joked about this a little bit during the week, and then also, on Friday night, after the game. But my 3 words are: don't forget Dunlap. I had heard that a lot of there's a lot of players of with the Eagles. We're too happy with us last week, whatever. Obviously, like you said, you kind of clarified on Twitter, it was a bold prediction. Like you said, it was a bold take. You're starting to have some fun. Maybe just take a bigger risk. Take a bigger risk. But I mean, obviously the Dunlap, obviously that must have fueled them because they showed out really well against Limestone. Even with freshman Johnny Bargan make the start at quarterback with a 41-0 win. Dunlap has East Peoria this week. And obviously they have a lot of momentum. East Peoria, can't forget about them. It's certainly a Raiders team that you can't really overlook, at least right now. But and Dunlap is a team, like we said many times in this broadcast. They're always in the mix. They haven't been able to finish at the top of the Mid-Illini, too much recently. But especially after winning 41-0, even though it was against Limestone, you're still rolling out a freshman quarterback. It was a great show, and I'm excited to see what they can do this week against East Peoria. And like I said, you never know. I mean, Dunlap can pull off another big win or two over teams like they can beat a Morton, a Metamora, Washington, who they all play later in the year. I think maybe building these confidence with games like that will really set them up for good things in the future.
Yeah, and I know but I'd even worked with Bargan's family, his dad, for the Bradley basketball team for the last few years. And he was talking to me on Friday. They were super excited to see Johnny play. And I've met Johnny a few times. Great kid. And, yeah, I think that was maybe to a degree pushed out there a little more than as something that it wasn't. But regardless, we're happy to see people engage with the podcast. But for my 3 words or less, it's kind of going to follow that trail where it's tiebreaker time, especially in the Mid-Illini. Just because all but 2 of the teams in that conference are now 1-1 in the conference, and it'll kind of flow into my bold prediction for this next week. But it's now this is where you can't necessarily win a conference in the first 4 weeks, but you can definitely lose it. And when you get all these big matchups, like you get the Metamora Cantons, you get the Pekin Mortons, all these games where you'll find a tiebreaker in the end that could either give you a whole share or a half share of the conference. That's where it's going to kind of boil down to. And then I believe we're going down here now to our preview games for the week. Mr. John Michael. Speaking of Dunlap, like we just said, East Peoria Dunlap, that'll be the home for our video stream.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to go to Dunlap for the first time this year. Obviously, first off, I want to say I've said a couple of times that, about places we broadcast. I've been at DMAC. I've been over to Dozer Park. Again, great facilities. Great field there. Great atmosphere as well. I'm really excited to be out at Dunlap, especially with them having some momentum. And we're also able to show the Eagles a little love this week and everything. But I mean, as far as what we're gonna see on the field, I think it's gonna be really interesting because obviously Dunlap had that big win over Limestone, and like a lot of people probably grouped EP and Limestone probably near the bottom of the Mid-Illini like at the start of the year. I think East Peoria is definitely, maybe broken free of that, and they are in the mix. I mean, even though they are 2-2, and one of their wins was against Limestone, and they had a narrow win over Aurora Central Catholic, who isn't exactly a powerhouse, but still with East Peoria, you got to be happy of just even be able to win a game and everything. So I'm really looking forward to see Gabe Ziegler Harris, who we had on the podcast here 2 weeks ago. He's a great guy. And a great football player as well. So I'm really pumped to see him, and I think it's going to be, I think Dunlap, even though their defense is pretty stout as they showed against Limestone, I think they are going to have a problem with Ziegler Harris because he's gouged people for 10 touchdowns in that 2-game winning streak that they had. He didn't find the end zone last week, but even still, he's going to be the focal point of the East Peoria offense. So. And I think if Dunlap, doesn't stop him or really be able to limit him, I think that they could possibly be in for a surprise. Dunlap is a team that, again, they're struggling to find consistency. I maybe shouldn't say struggling because I think they have been able to work on that, improve on it the last couple of weeks. But obviously, if you can get Dunlap on the right day, I know they're I mean, honestly, any team in the middle line, you get them on the right day, you can pull an upset. So. East Peoria will definitely have a chance in that game. Excited to see, though, what Dunlap and Johnny Bargan can do if Bargan does, in fact, get the start over Madden Burke this week. So a lot of different things to look out for. And East Peoria's first appearance at least for their football team on CSM, since 2019, I believe. So that's going to be really fun. Glad to be able to just kind of shine a spotlight on both the Raiders and the Eagles.
Yeah, and Joko, you and I, we saw Dunlap. It would have been against Pekin when we were in Dunlap, and that Dunlap was right there to win that game. Now they're taking on an EP team that, dropped their first one of the year again, though, but they're 1-1. That puts them tied in the second place of the conference with pretty much everybody else not named Pekin. So, how are we kind of breaking down this game? Because right now, this is, it's kind of silly to say an under-the-radar game, but, both teams have got a real shot.
Well, yeah, they certainly do. And like John was saying, I like East Peoria. They did get that loss against Canton, but, before that, it was nice seeing them get some big wins, one in the Mid-Illini and then snapping that losing streak. So that obviously gave them a lot of confidence. East Peoria is not the team to sleep on. I still think they're capable of going out there and even beating a team like Dunlap. And then you look at the Eagles, transitioning. If Johnny Bergen's going to be the quarterback, you're kind of filling that role of Burke usually being your starter. So it could poise, some different things to see from Dunlap. But I think this game could be a lot closer than a lot of people expect. I think East Peoria could go out and give them a fight. And, what we've seen from Dunlap and what we say about a lot of teams is just limiting those mistakes. The game that they were right there with Pekin just had some costly turnovers late and just a lot of false starts that kind of push them back in yardage. So if they can eliminate that and just clean up some of those penalties, I think this game could be really close. And East Peoria's obviously got to come out and bring their A game, but I think this would be a game in the Mid-Illini, like you said, that's under the radar, but could definitely be the game of the week.
Yeah, and again, you guys may feel differently than me about it, but especially with this game being in Dunlap, I think we kind of saw the effect that can have on the opposing team, because when we saw Pekin go in there, there were a couple of drives where they were, able to drive all the way down inside the 15, 20-yard line, but then it'd be just kind of, whatever reason, whether it's the crowd making enough noise or just a poor decision from the offense, but Dunlap's defense might be, right up there with Pekin's in terms of, opportunistic, takeaways, just how disciplined they do play, because they don't make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, it definitely is hard to, put up, big numbers against Dunlap's defense. Even like the last couple of years, you looked at the games they've lost, and they haven't, given up that many points. I know, I think they lost the game. It was either Rock Island or Galesburg last year, and they only gave up a touchdown. They lost at 7-6, I think. And in their playoff game, which last year, which was against, I believe, Mascoutah. I don't think that even Mascoutah, who was a very good team last year, put up that many points against them. And that trend has also continued into this year as well. So I think as long as Dunlap's offense is able to put up points, I think they should be in good position both in this game and for the rest of the year. But like you said, Dunlap's defense, they don't really make a lot of mistakes. They're always a well-disciplined unit. And I think, as long as, Gabe Ziegler-Harris doesn't, go hog wild, they should be in good position. But again, Ziegler-Harris is one of the best running backs in the area, so that may be easier said than done.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Gabe Ziegler-Harris, it's, again, what do you have? What was it, week one game? 48 carries, and he ended up with 6 touchdowns or something like that. It's just pure volume, and you got to wonder, especially for him, because he's going to be, the it guy for his offense, and for the majority of the time, sometimes on defense. So how long, before teams, take him away, and then who's that second option for EP? I think that's going to be the big question this week, because Dunlap's going to put the 1A target on him, and that'll be kind of something to watch. And it kind of carries a theme into our next game, because it's Pekin at Morton for our radio broadcast on ESPN 101.1, and this has kind of just got the feel of one of those big games, right? Morton's coming off a devastating loss to Metamora, and again, Metamora is not a bad team, but it was kind of a loss that was tight the whole way through, and you could have easily have won it as well as lost it. And Pekin's coming off, and they're 2-0 in the conference, 4-0 overall, and everyone's saying they're the favorite. How do you guys see this one breaking down?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really exciting Mid-Illini game. When we talk about depth on teams, you look at Pekin. Just in that game against Washington, they got Tanner Sprecher, who they just, they could hand him the ball 20 times a game, and he's just going to run for you every time. And then you got Kanye Tyler at back, so that's just the dynamic duo right there. Those are 2 guys that are probably the best rushers in the area that are going to get you great games night in and night out. And you got Scotty Jordan at quarterback going to his favorite target, Bo Benassi, which, I mentioned, he's such a hard receiver to guard. But when you go to the Morton side of the thing, they're just as impressive running the ball. They got Brett Michael. They have Carl Whitaker. That Michael Wong can chip in and get some yards for you. So this is a game that's going to come down to defense. There's going to be a lot of speed, a lot of ball rushing, a lot of passing. And then defense is obviously what's going to win this game for either side. I think Morton's definitely within reach to win a game like this. Pekin showed that they can keep teams close. Dunlap had a chance. Washington got down early, so kind of had to play catch-up. But as long as Morton's defense is, playing their best game, I think they could give Pekin a run. But, expect this game to be pretty close throughout about three quarters.
Yeah, and I think with Pekin, obviously, all the highlights go to their offense. We've talked about Tyler and Sprecher, Jordan Benassi, all their offensive weapons. And it's no secret what kind of assets they are. But also people do forget, may not forget, but I think Pekin's defense, also just really makes them a complete football team. In week 1, Braden Beckham, returning all-conference selection, he was a force on the D-line. They have good linebacking play. Shimon Handigan was also really impressive when I saw him as well. And then in their secondary, they have Connor Drowns and Kanye Tyler as well. Who Tyler's a very good free safety, hard hitter as well. And so Pekin has a couple of playmakers at every level on their defense. I was reading Joko's mind. I think it is going to come down to defense, and Morton also has a very good front seven as well. So I think, I think it's going to be whoever can limit the other team to maybe less than 30 points. I think will most likely come out on top.
No, I think that's a good point, John. Just because you mentioned all the back end talent they had, whether it be Drowns, who can kind of shift between linebacker and that star safety role, or whether it be Tyler. I think this game's gonna be won and lost, and I don't think it's any mystery at the line of scrimmage, right? If Morton's hogs up front or just as good as Pekin's dragging, that line versus line play is just gonna be pivotal. And we saw kind of from time to time, especially in that Dunlap game, when they string it to the sideline, that's like they used to try and do like a jet handoff with Sprecher or Tyler, trying him on the perimeter. Sometimes it almost seemed like Dunlap, their monster was like, okay, we're going to stop the run and we're going to let you throw the ball, and if that's what beats us, that's what beats us. And I almost feel like that's going to be kind of the same approach Morton takes, because they know that, to a degree, they saw the blueprint for Pekin was if you can just kind of take a little bit of time on drives, put it close into the end, red zone, and let the cards fall where they may. Whether your offense pushes it in or kicks a field goal, you're going to have a chance at the end of the game. And I feel like that's kind of what Morton's going to be feeling like, especially after coming off that close loss. They're going to be right back at home, and they're going to be more than jazzed up to get the only undefeated team left in the conference. We'll go ahead and jump ahead now to our 2-minute drill. This is a fan favorite section, one that usually stirs the pot just a little bit in the CSM group chat. But first, we'll go ahead and start with John Michael, and then we'll go to John Komosa, and then we'll go to me. Mr. John Michael, what do you have first for your game that is flying under the radar?
So I have, I'm going to the Heart of Illinois Conference this week. Again, one of the most competitive conferences in Central Illinois. Obviously, Mid-Illini, Big 12, HOI, all great conferences. A lot of teams, in contention. So we're really blessed to be able to see so much, competitive football in the area. But I'm going to the HOI this week. I'm going Eureka at Gibson City, Melvin Sibley. And Eureka has just been unstoppable this year. The last 3 weeks, they've outscored opponents 163-0, which is, pretty insane. We knew that the Hornets were going to be good, but I don't know if anybody expected them to be putting up numbers like this, because, it's been pure insanity with their offense. And, their defense is obviously, no points. That's obviously insanely impressive as well. And as far as GCMS, as a team that went 4-5 last year, they had seen a lot of success in years prior, but they're up to a 3-1 start this year, so they're certainly back on track to have a great year, another playoff appearance as well. And this is the start of a big stretch for the Falcons, because they face Eureka, and then they play Ridgeview Lexington, who's undefeated currently in week 6, and then in week 7 they go play Tri-Valley, who is 3-1 on the year. Probably one of the best 3-1 teams in the entire area. So that's going to be the start of a huge stretch for Gibson City, Melvin Sibley. So, I mean, even if they don't come out with a win, which certainly it is possible, because they are one of the stronger opponents that Eureka has faced this year. I think even if they don't come away with a win this time, it will really set them up to have good games and be battle tested when they face Ridgeview, Lexington, and Tri-Valley.
Yeah, so one of the games that I think is kind of going under the radar here, and we were just talking about them for a good portion of the segment, is Richwoods. Richwoods going to be on the road at Normal West. Obviously, Normal West, one of the top teams in the area up until that loss against Richmond Burton this past Saturday. Normal West hadn't allowed a touchdown up until allowing 33 against Richmond Burton. That's a really good 4A team right there in Richmond Burton. But Richwoods, showing good signs with that win over Notre Dame, putting up some big points there. I like the Knights. I'm not saying they win this game, but to get in there and definitely hang around, I don't think they're going to get blown out by any means by the Wildcats. I think this team is finding their confidence. I think they're gaining some momentum as the season picks up. And then Greg Burnside just really letting that leadership in him shine. He's a veteran quarterback. He's showing that he's the veteran quarterback, and he showed that against Notre Dame. And you got Weisinger and Davis. He's got a lot of targets out there to throw to and hand the ball off to. And, Richwood's one of those teams that I wouldn't sleep on them if I was the opposing team. They're not a team to be overlooked. They got down a little bit early and had to fix some kinks, but I think they're back on track now. That win over the Irish was a huge confidence boost. And going into a team like Normal West, if they can get a win, that's a really good thing going forward in this Big 12, especially as the bulk's going to pick up. So that's one of the games under the radar. I believe it's a 7:30 start on Friday, and that's Richwoods at Normal West.
Yeah, I think that's also a really good pick. And I was talking with John a little bit before we got on, but I'm also going to go out to the heart of Illinois Conference, and I'm taking El Paso Gridley, who's 4-0, against Ridgeview Lexington Coupe, which is out of Colfax. But both those teams 4-0. It's necessarily an under the radar game. It's kind of silly to say because both teams are 4-0. But next week, El Paso Gridley plays Eureka, and me and Jonathan are both really high on Eureka after going and seeing them in the preseason play. And that's going to set up a huge conference matchup for them because that, for all intents and purposes, could kind of necessarily clinch a playoff spot, but it puts you right on the doorstep of doing it to get to 5-0, and then you get to 6-0. And so I think that game alone is going to be really tight. And it's, again, for El Paso Gridley, it's not like they're blowing teams out of the water to get to where they are right now. I think their last game was, they played DMAC, and they won 13-8. Looking at the game before that, they played Gibson City. It was 14-13. And then other than that, they had Meriden and Fieldcrest, who they beat as well. But I think that's kind of like the under-the-radar heart of Illinois game. And so I think as we watch this conference, as much as we like talking about the Mid-Illini and Big 12, let's not turn a blind eye to what's happening in the heart of Illinois.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, go ahead, John.
Sorry, no, I just want to chime in, and both those teams are two teams that are on big upswings right now. El Paso Gridley, they had seen a couple losing seasons, before 2020 and a couple years before that. Again, also a team that's seen a lot of success, in the 2000s, and under Tanner Benedict, they're obviously 4-0, 2 big wins over DMAC, and then also. Can't remember who they beat week 3 off the top of my head. I don't know why. I can't remember. But anyway, but they have had some impressive wins, and they're around the doorstep of clinching not clinching because technically 5 wins doesn't clinch. 6 wins clinches. 5 wins.
5 puts you like on the doorstep, like you're right there.
So 5 wins will pretty much, you got about a 99 probably about % chance of getting it in. So it's a big game for EPG. Then Ridgeview Lexington went 5-4 last year. Reeled off a crazy run. Went to the state semifinals, I believe, or could have been the quarters as well. Again, I just gotta. If memory serves me right, I'm pretty sure it was the semifinals. But regardless, the Mustangs are they are really hot in their last 8, 9, 10 games. Only lost coming in the playoffs, so I think I think that Ridgeview Lexington is a team I'm really excited to see what they're going to do this year. They beat Tri-Valley, which was a big statement win, so I think that HOIC game is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and of course Gavin isn't here, but he still wanted to be put on the record. His game to watch that was flying under the radar was Canton at Metamora, so the Little Giants and the Redbirds. We'll have a little chat about it amongst ourselves here, but guys, Little Giants with the Redbirds, Metamora coming off a big win against Morton, Canton getting win number 1 against East Peoria. I mean, that's going to be a good game.
Yeah, it is, and Canton's one of those teams that not a team to be slept on either. This could be another really close Mid-Illini game. Canton showed really good things taking down East Peoria, able to shut them out. And this was the East Peoria team that was on a little bit of a streak there, and Canton's defense just really stepped up big, able to get that 41-0 win. On the flip side, Metamora getting that win over Morton in a game that was close kind of throughout the first half, and then late second half, obviously the Redbirds pulled away. But another game that I think is definitely to be watched in the Mid-Illini. I expect Canton to keep this game close, and Metamora, could go either way. I mean, it's hard to say. If I had to take a pick, I like Metamora, but I think Canton's definitely capable of keeping this within a score or two.
Yeah, and with that being said, we'll kind of shift into now the big conversation pieces that we all like to joke about in the CSM group chat, and that is our bold predictions for the week. Jonathan, Michael, I'll go ahead and start with you because I'll have to do mine and Gavin's, and then we'll go to Joko, and then we'll go over to me and Gavin's. But Jonathan, Michael, kick us off. What is your hot take / bold predictions? You're currently 2-1 on the season, tied for first place with me. What do you got this week?
So my hot take for the week is that we will see a 300-yard rusher this week across the area. Now, there's definitely some options of, who it could be. We've seen some insane performances from guys like Gabe Ziegler-Harris, Malachi Washington, Carl Whitaker, LaShawn Wallace of Canton had a massive game in week 4. So, obviously a lot of running backs having really good games. Even in the P&D Richards game, we saw Ludolph, Handley, Jeremiah Flores all had really good games. Obviously with a shared backfield, it might be tougher for one of them to reach 300, but we have seen a lot of 200, 225, 250-yard performances that, regardless, are still just like, wow. That's crazy. Malachi Washington, I think, probably has the most yardage in the area. I would say he's probably my best guess to reach 300 against Manuel, but I think that there's a number of backs in the area that could reach that 300-yard mark, and I think we're finally going to see it this week. So that's my hot take for week 5.
Yeah, now we'll go to Joko. Again, this is his first, but he'll go on the guest tab. Guests are 1-0 on the season so far. Wes Hewitt last week picked the Richwoods over P&D win in the Shamrock Classic. Joko, what do you got?
I'm going to go with a little bit of an upset here on paper, but I think Morton's got a really good chance if their defense holds of upsetting Pekin. Like I said, Pekin's been in some close games. Washington kept it close, and then obviously Dunlap was right there, almost knocked off the Dragons through a late interception. But if Morton's run game can get it going with Carl Whitaker and Brett Michael, and their defense is solid up front, as well as their secondary, able to limit some of those long pass plays to Benassi, and then obviously able to, it's a tall task, but able to, have a solid line up front that can stop Tanner Sprecher, which many teams haven't found a way to do yet. But if they can do that and keep this game close late, I like Morton to pull out and grab an upset here.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot, too, where it's like you could see him win, you could also see him lose, and it kind of goes back and forth. That's the story in the Mid-Illini this week, and so I kind of took a page out of Gavin's playbook back in week 1 when he said, all Peoria City teams were going to win. And so I'm going to go out on this kind of a limb and say all the home teams in the Mid-Illini will win, especially with it being tiebreaker, week. You kind of get to the midway point of the season to a degree. You want to try and start capturing those tiebreakers to get yourself conference titles. And so I'm going to take all the home teams in the Mid-Illini. The one that scares me, I think, the most, and I don't think any of these are overly more probable than the other, but I think the one that scares me the most is the Pekin Morton, and it's just because, like you said, Sprecher and Kanye Tyler are just alone hard enough to stop, but the rest of that offense is also really lethal, and that defense is no slouch either. And that'll kind of feel into Gavin's pick as well, because back for his game under the radar to watch, when he took Canton at Metamora, he's taking the Little Giants to outright win in Metamora, and he's saying a big reason for that is going to be LaShawn Wallace, and I know, John, you're a big fan on him.
Yeah, definitely. It was good to see Wallace kind of get back in the spotlight. Obviously, he's had some good games this year, but last week was definitely his best of the season, really shining that win over East Peoria and everything. And so I know Canton they have Wallace, but they also have Joe Norton in the backfield as well, a couple other playmakers on offense. But I'm really excited to see what LaShawn Wallace can do. And Canton beat Metamora last year. I mean, obviously that was after their starting quarterback Connor Willerton got injured. And the Little Giants pulled off a big win. So Metamora is going to come out for this game real motivated. They want to avenge that loss last year, but Canton, they have a little momentum. So who knows what could happen? I mean, I don't think the Little Giants, even at 1-3 overall, are a team to sleep on. And Metamora learned that the hard way last year.
Yeah, and that'll, for all intents and purposes, pretty much wrap the show. Do you guys have any last minute comments you'd like to say? Set the record straight. What are we seeing here in an exciting, I guess, week 5?
Go ahead, Joko.
I just think like Cody was saying earlier, tiebreaker time. I think just one of my quick little hot takes is that the Mid-Illini is going to be up for grabs. I mean, if Morton can get a win over Pekin, they're right there. Obviously, Dunlap, teams that are still in the mix that are not quite out of this race yet for a Mid-Illini title. I think it's going to be interesting, especially if Metamora can, kind of keep up their win streak after beating Morton. A lot of teams in here still within reach of this Mid-Illini as the season kind of comes to a close here soon. That's crazy to say, but only a few weeks left in the season.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think, kind of go off of what Joko was saying, it's, crazy that we're, almost halfway through the season. And, I still, don't know what to make of the Big 12, I think. I mean, obviously, Joe talked about the Mid-Illini. The Big 12 has been equally crazy as well because you don't know who the favorite in that conference is. I mean, a lot of people, might say Peoria. And I definitely think that, if I had to pick one, they definitely would be. But you also had Normal West, and there's, really, really good. Normal Community is probably the best 1-3 team in the state, just like, Nebraska said last year they were the best 3-9 team in the country. I think, Normal Community might be the best 1-3 team in the country. And then you also, got teams like Centennial, they're playing real good. P&D, even after the loss of Ridgewood, still in the mix as well. Bloomington and Danville also, a couple teams that can, make some upsets. So, Big 12 is going to be really fun to watch as well. So is the Heart of Illinois Conference. Like I said earlier, I mean, we are really blessed to be, in the market for, 3, some of the most competitive football conferences around. And, can't wait to see what Week 5 brings.
You guys said it better than I could have. Week 5 is coming up fast and in a hurry. A lot of things to watch out for. I'll be on the bench this week. Gavin was on the bench last week. Wish you guys both the best on your calls, and we'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you.
See you, Cody.